the Geek Easy, fellow geeks. Let's open a beverage of your choice. See this? Because today I'm going to do a review of Superman 2025. Now, I think I just on my last one that I did, I said that I was going to go see it Friday. But I found out, like today, that Prime members could go see a special screening, and I managed to get 2 tickets, one for me and one for my friend Chris, and get there to watch the movie. So here it is. I just gave myself a couple of hours to kind of sort through how I feel about this movie, what I thought of it and all that, and let me go through it. Now, I had some concerns that I've seen a lot of James Gunn's movies. I don't know if I've seen them all, but I saw The Three Guardians. I saw what was that? The reboot of Task Force X, Suicide Squad. I saw Peacemaker, all this other stuff, and I know his sense of humor. I know he likes taking obscure characters that you wouldn't think of putting in movies and making them the center of attention, and have his particular sense of humor in that, which he does with this movie. Let me start with some of the things I liked. Overall, this movie looked really good. Overall, it looked pretty good. There was a few objections that I had to it. If you watched Man of Steel, the flying and fight scenes, it was just way too much. It was some POV stuff that it just seemed like kind of shaky, and it was too much kind of visually. There was a few scenes like that in this, and which was distracting. And there's a scene which you see in the preview, so I'm not giving anything away here, where he punches a guy and you see 3 or 4 teeth fly out towards the screen. And I think that was just done, 1, for comedy effect, and 2, because there's some 3D versions of this out there. So it got kind of, despite its overall really kind of good look on things, it got a little bit too overstimulated at sometimes, or just a little too shaky. But the lady who played Lois Lane, I think she did a really good job. In my opinion, she is the best person in the movies to play Lois Lane. I can't say that I saw the Lois and Superman, the one that just ended on the WB, so that's why I said movie one. She did a really good job, but the 2 performances that I really, really enjoyed, and I'm surprised about one of them, was the guy that played Mr. Terrific. That character was just, awesome. I'm aware of who Mr. Terrific is. I've seen him in, a lot of the comics. But he was written really well in this one, and had a really good arc. He he had some kind of funny lines, but it wasn't the over the top, silly type of stuff that some of the other things that people people put in there. But he was really well written. You know, the stuff that he did was useful, and the guy that played him just did a fantastic job. And Lex Luthor, wow. This guy, not only does he look the part of them from, especially the way he's drawn in a lot of the comics. He did some really, he did just this fantastic performance. It was just, he was menacing, and there was this kind of a manic attitude about him, but there's also this control and this genius that he had in there, and this confidence. And there was, you could see them when they came out, and he just, and they were all there, and certain ones would flash at times, and it was just wow. So those are the two. Mr. Terrific and Lex Luthor were the two really good performances in there. That I really want to see more of him, of Mr. Terrific, and I'd like Lex Luthor to be in some more of the movies, not to the extent of what it was in the first 4 movies, where he was in 3 of the 4. We don't need him in every movie, but I'd like to see him more in other stuff. David Cornsweet, he was okay, but none of the acting was bad. They were all pretty good, considering the way this was written. It 2 hours 8 minutes long, or something like that, a little over 2 hours, and it moved really quick. But I think part of it, you're sort of just enraptured with all the how good it looked the majority of the time. There was just so much stuff going on, and this was part of my problem. One of my concerns, like what they did in BVS. Way too much stuff going on. Because, in BVS they had the Dark Knight Returns, with the fight between Batman and Superman. You had the death of Superman, so you had those two fight, all that stuff. You had the Wonder Woman introduction. Then you had to throw, Doomsday in, all this stuff, just trying to get everything together so you could set the Justice League. And that is one of the things they did in here, which, not to the extent of what they did with BVS, and I'm glad about that, but there was just too much that he was trying to put in here. They had Hawkman. Not Hawkwoman. Sorry, not Hawkman, but Hawkwoman. You had Guy Gardner. You had Mr. Terrific. You had Crypto the dog, and I'll get to that in a minute. Plus Lex Luthor and all this, and the the geopolitical plot they're going on. So they had to keep switching back and forth to different things that were just. There's some scenes that should have been kind of fleshed out more, or that they didn't do because there's so much going on, or they were interrupted by some of the typical silliness that James Gunn puts into his movies. Because you have like these little background characters that didn't need to be in the movie, that were there for a comedic effect, that they could have not been in there at all, and it wouldn't have affected the movie at all, but just giving the characters a couple more minutes of time. And there's a couple other scenes where I guess they're maybe trying to foreshadow stuff that's going to be coming in down the road. So he put too much stuff in there. And tone it back a little bit, take out these, like there's a reporter in the Daily Planet who I'm not quite sure if he was a character from the comics, but he was the sports reporter who kind of bullied Clark. And he was brought on a mission in Mr. Fantastic's little vehicle that Lois was flying for reasons you'll see in the movie. Because why? There was an extra seat, so they brought him. This guy had no reason to be there other than they needed an extra person, and this guy to be the James Gunn comedic effect type, which he didn't need. And then like there's another guy in Lex's camp who was one of his operators, technicians, who was this kind of doofus dumb guy who was like, oh, he was there for the comedy effect. You didn't need these guys. You just move them aside. Take them out, Because Superman, yes, there can be funny moments in it. But, Superman isn't the movie for these, the over-the-top silly moments. You can have that in, other stuff like Peacemaker. That's, that's the type of movie that you have stuff like that. Or, certain characters in Guardians of the Galaxy. Superman's not one of them. And I think they had a couple of scenes, speaking of, moving scenes along, or certain scenes that shouldn't have been there. If you've seen the previews, there was a scene where Lois was interviewing Clark as Superman. And she started questioning him on stuff, pushing him on his actions for stopping that war. This is from the trailer, so I'm not saying anything if you haven't seen the trailers. And he just starts to lose it. Superman, even as a younger, less experienced Superman, because he's only been doing this for like 3 years at this point, wouldn't have lost his shit like that in this. I don't think he would have. And he just seemed like a little petulant little kid in that, where he's getting beaten, he knows it. Superman was not the type to just lose control like that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he was doing with it. That being said, this movie was better than I thought it was going to be. It was very entertaining. It moved quickly. The certain people say that, James Gunn admitted there's going to be some politics in there, and there was some in there. It was very rudimentary. It was very just basic, because like, oh boy, you're having this tech billionaire who's doing this. I mean, that's just, gee, you've never done that before, and you're not, can we be a little bit more obvious who we're talking and trying to talk about and stuff? Just, you need to have a little bit more originality and stuff like that. But, it was fun to watch. It was, despite its flaws at certain points, the silliness that I was afraid was going to happen didn't happen as much as I thought it would be, except for one point, and that was the dog. You know how earlier I said you have a character in there that shouldn't be in there? This dog never should have been in there to begin with. At all. At all. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where he takes characters from before, back. I think Crypto was either Gold or Silver Age. And I don't think he's really been in the comics since then, up until fairly recently, when James Gunn decided to put him in this movie. And instead of making Crypto like the dog was in the comics, and again, I haven't seen much of him in the comics, he doesn't look a bit like the dog. But Crypto in the comics, from what I understand, is very kind of a well-behaved dog, smart dog. It does, what Clark wants, does what Kal-El does. But this one is just this horrible little dog that, doesn't do, just misbehaves. It gets in the way of stuff. It causes more problems than it helps solve, even though it does help solve a couple of things. And it's only there for, humor. And the, oh gee, look how cute this dog is thing. So I really wish they hadn't put him in there at all. And, when we were Chris and I were at the concession stand getting stuff, I managed to get this, which, if you look on the bottom, it has a little power switch, and I guess it lights up on here. I don't know why. You can't see it more, but there is I guess it's supposed to be a popcorn thing, but it's a dog dish, Crypto dog dish with the dog on it. I was just trying to get, I guess that's why they have the dog in there, so they can sell stuff like that. But, for the suckers who go and buy weird things that are attached to the movies, just wonder who'd do something kind of dumb like that, huh? But, that dog shouldn't have been in there. Let me wrap this up by saying this movie was better than I thought it was going to be. It went quickly. There should have been even though there was too many storylines that they needed to try and wrap up, and then maybe they didn't get them all, it was a fairly satisfying ending, despite a couple things I didn't like with what Lex Luthor admitted at the end. But I enjoyed it. It was it was fun. If I was to put this in between, yeah, in a ranking between a lot of all the previous movies before this, I would put it. Okay, so you have the original 1976 original with Christopher Reeve. You have Superman 2. I would put this right up there, third between with those two, and I'd put that and Man of Steel right there at number three, maybe tied for number three, and then all the rest of them underneath. I guess maybe three, then Returns, then four. But then of course I'd put the Donner Cut at number two or 1.5. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, just because there was kind of a jumble of things in there that could have been tightened up a bit. Some of the characterizations I think were a little off, like Jimmy. I'm not going to go into that now because I've already rambled on a little bit too long on this one. The super. Oh, I'm not gonna. Don't want to spoil that. But the some of the chaotic fight scenes and the silliness, but it was still a fun, good movie. And the only thing I hope that they do in the next one is fix that stupid suit because it looked horrible. That suit looked horrible. I need a new suit because this one is just awful. But 4 out of 5. And I will say go see it. Anyway, let me know if you saw it, what you think of it when you saw it, and like, subscribe, and enjoy your comic movies.